Have you ever wondered? Despite sharing over 1,200 kilometers of border, someone from Lisbon often has DNA closer to that of the Irish or Western French than to someone from Barcelona. It sounds like a geographical error. They live on the same peninsula, have a similar climate, and were once ruled by the Romans and the Moors. Yet, DNA reveals a story that maps can't draw. While Spain is a diverse mosaic of Mediterranean, continental European, and Basque influences, Portugal has evolved as a genetic island for nearly a millennium. This isn't just about culture or language. It involves ancient Ice Age refugees, the strange Swabian kingdom, and a 900-year-old border that acts as a biological filter. Today we'll explore why beneath the skin are the Portuguese and Spanish so different. To understand the difference, look at the two front doors of the Iberian Peninsula. Spain is the gateway to the Mediterranean. Over thousands of years, the eastern and southern coasts were landing points for Greeks, Phoenicians, Carthaginians, and Romans. That creates a rich, diverse genetic picture, but one that leans heavily eastward. Meanwhile, Portugal is the Atlantic fortress. During the last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago, the western edge of Iberia was a refuge for hunter-gatherers. As the earth warmed, those pioneering people moved north along the coast. This formed what scientists call the Atlantic façade. While central and eastern Spain received continuous waves of migration from continental Europe, the western edge remained a stronghold of these ancient Atlantic lineages. That's why, even today, haplogroup subclades in Portugal often mirror those found in the British Isles and Brittany. This is even more than what is seen in the Italian peninsula. The country of Portugal is not only formed from the continent, but also from the vast ocean. We need to be careful not to think of Spain as a homogeneous genetic block. In fact, it is a fascinating mosaic. For instance, the Basque people in the northern region possess one of the most unique genetic profiles in the world. They carry genetic markers that predate the arrival of Indo-European farmers to this land. The Catalan people in the eastern region have close genetic ties to southern France. The Galician people in the northwest are essentially considered close genetic relatives of the Portuguese. However, if we compare the typical genome of the Portuguese with that of the Spanish, we notice a clear shift toward the west. While Spain received waves of migration from inland Europe and the Mediterranean region, Portugal's genetic story was shaped by its separation from the ocean. When the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, Germanic tribes poured into the Iberian Peninsula, forever altering its demographic landscape. Most of us are familiar with the Visigoths, who later dominated almost all of Iberia and chose Toledo as their capital. However, in the northwest, present-day northern Portugal and Galicia, a smaller, often forgotten tribe lived, the Swabians. The Swabians originated from the area that is now Germany. Unlike the Visigoths, who frequently moved and engaged in power struggles across the peninsula, the Swabians established something remarkable. The Swabian kingdom was one of the first post-Roman kingdoms to achieve solid stability in Western Europe. Their capital was Bracara Augusta, which is the present-day city of Braga in northern Portugal. Lasting over 170 years, from 409 to 585 AD, this kingdom maintained a unique identity, separate from the Visigothic lands to the south. This division left significant marks on the genetic map. While the Visigoths eventually mixed widely across the peninsula, the Swabians left a distinctly concentrated genetic trace in the northwest. Northern Portugal exhibits strong Scandinavian genetic signals. Markers such as I1 and R1BU106 are not merely statistical numbers. These DNA traces are direct evidence of communities that arrived, settled, and stayed for long periods. This is the core reason why the genome of northern Portuguese people remains unique, completely different from the diverse genetics of the Spanish. The Swabians didn't just pass through, they truly laid the foundation for the genetics here. One of the most shocking mysteries in modern Iberian Peninsula genetics is the legacy of the Moors, which is often misunderstood. Both Portugal and Spain were under the rule of Islamic dynasties for centuries. The Moors arrived in 711 AD and held power for over 700 years in many regions. So what is the paradox that surprises many people? It turns out that North African genetic signatures appear more in Portugal than in many regions of Spain, and this is surprising. Even regions like Andalusia, where the Moors ruled much longer, until 1492. What is the reason behind this? The secret lies not in how long the Moors stayed, but in what happened after they left. The Christian Reconquista unfolded completely differently between the two countries. In Spain, when Christian kingdoms like Castile and Aragon reconquered territory, they often expelled or relocated entire native communities, especially in the final phase in Granada in 1492. The Spanish Inquisition made this process even more brutal, forcing Muslims and Jews to convert or leave throughout the 15th and 16th centuries. In contrast, in Portugal, this process was slower and involved stronger integration as the Portuguese monarchy advanced south from its northern base. Instead of complete replacement, there was strong mixing among native Iberians, Romans, and settled North African and Moorish communities. This is especially evident in southern Portugal, such as Alentejo and Algarve, where the North African haplogroup EM81 accounts for up to 15% in some communities. The result is a unique Western Mediterranean genetic imprint, far different from the genetic landscape in eastern Spain, where the replacement process was more thorough. The Moors were not merely rulers of Portugal. They merged into the very blood of the people here. Experts have analyzed DNA from both sides, paternal and maternal inheritance. The results show a statistically significant difference between Portuguese and Spanish people. First difference: Portugal is part of the Atlantic Iberia group. This means the Portuguese have a closer genetic relationship with Atlantic coastal populations such as Ireland, Brittany, and Western France. In contrast, Spain belongs to the Mediterranean Iberia group with stronger ties to southern France, Italy, and the eastern Mediterranean region. Next interesting point: North African influence. Portuguese people typically carry 5% to 12% North African ancestry, depending on the region, with the highest proportion in the south. In Spain, this proportion varies more and is generally lower, except in some regions like Andalusia. The third factor comes from Germanic peoples. Portugal has a concentrated genetic imprint from Northern Europe, especially Sweden. Haplogroups such as I1 and R1BU106 appear with a frequency of 5 to 8% in northern Portugal. Conversely, Spain has a more widespread but less concentrated Visigothic influence, spread evenly across the peninsula. The fourth factor is Mediterranean gene flow. Spain has absorbed a much larger amount of Eastern Mediterranean DNA. This DNA source originates from Greek colonies, Phoenician settlements, and Byzantine traders, especially along the eastern and southern coasts of Spain. Located on the Atlantic fringe, Portugal is much less affected by this. And the fifth factor, Celtic origin. Both countries share a common genetic foundation from the Celts. However, Portugal, especially the north and center, shows direct inheritance from pre-Roman communities such as the Lusitanians and Galaeci. This creates a genetic bridge to the ancient Atlantic world, a feature almost absent in Mediterranean-oriented Spain. These differences are not minor. If you place individual Portuguese and Spanish people on a European genetic map, they cluster separately despite sharing a border. Today, the genetic diversity of the Portuguese people is the result of many waves of migration and settlement throughout history. Northern Portugal, especially the Minho region, has deeply absorbed the heritage of the Celts and Germans. The inhabitants here often have fair skin, blue or green eyes, and blonde or light brown hair, all linked to Northern European ancestry. The northern villages maintain a stable genetic lineage with ancient communities, while northern cities have seen more genetic fluctuations in recent times. In central Portugal, such as the Beiras or the Douro Valley, the genetic picture becomes more harmonious due to the blend of Celts, Romans, and Moors. Genetic research results indicate that people from central Portugal possess an astonishing physical diversity, from fair skin and light eyes in the north to more Mediterranean features in the south. The central region is a buffer zone where, over thousands of years, different influences have intermingled and merged southward. In Alentejo and Algarve, the imprint of Neolithic farmers, Romans, Moors, and Sephardic Jews is even more evident. Inhabitants of these two regions often have olive brown skin, jet black hair, and dark brown eyes, all telling a story of close ties with Mediterranean and North African peoples. Portugal officially established its border in 1139, and for nearly 9 centuries, this Raya border has remained one of the most stable national boundaries on Earth. While the Spanish kingdoms constantly merged and split, Portugal maintained its unity and always oriented itself toward the Atlantic. This very stability has created a distinct genetic flow lasting 9 centuries. The Portuguese form a tightly knit genetic family, descendants of Atlantic pioneers from the Ice Age. Influences from the Swabians, impacts from the Moorish past have been assimilated, and all were forged over a millennium of independence to shape them. Today, every step through Lisbon or Porto is like turning the pages of a vivid history book. Every face here is a story chapter stretching back to the Ice Age. If you find these interesting, don't miss our other in-depth DNA analyses. We have explored Portuguese DNA, Spanish DNA, Irish, English, German ancestry, and the Atlantic connection. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Which genetic mystery should we decode next? See you next time, and don't forget to continue your journey of exploring genes.